Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron. I'm speaking to you from a nuclear-proof bunker in the Poco Palace in Vancouver, Canada. And I'm joined by my assistant co-host, Cindy Vole, who's up on the penthouse overlooking Salt Lake City. And we're joined today. We're going to do movies today. We got Darcy Weir with us today. He's done a lot of movies and he's worked on a lot of subjects. He's like me, he's gone across the spectrum of ESP, psychic phenomena. I want to ask him about Men in Black, high level officials, Tracy Dolan. I've got a whole list of things I want to deal with. And Cindy will go down the questions she wants to do with. So, have you got a little intro there, Cindy, so you can read
I
that?
do.
And we'll go from there.
So, Darcy Weir's name is synonymous with UFO, UAP. In the UFO circle, his name is very, very well known. He's been doing this type of work since 2009, first video, UFO, UAP, with the latest on which is available on Amazon, Apple TV, called The Psychic Phenomena. And it's also in the chat. So some of the movies that he's made, The Forgotten History of ESP Research, Psychic and UFOs, Non-Human Intelligence in Consciousness, Cold War Psychic Program, The Role of Intuition in Contact Experiences, Bridging Science and the Phenomena, Whistleblowers and Experiencers, Cross-Culture Patterns, The Stigma Factor, What It Means for Disclosure. I mean, it sounds like each and every single one of them requires an interview. I mean, all of it is just unbelievable. Like, I'm terribly interested in the non-human intelligence and consciousness, because I think consciousness is reflective. And I really think UFO, near-death experience, reincarnation, all of which is consciousness driven, which is non-local. So take it away, Darcy. We're so pleased to have you and so honored to be speaking with you.
Thank you, Cindy and Grant. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Another fellow Canadian. I, yeah, this latest doc is, it was a fun one to make. I ended up doing a historical sort of telling, which many people have heard about remote viewing and the Stargate program, which has become famous from Russell Targ outing it. Um, and getting the declassified papers through his son, who sued the government to release them.
Wow.
Um, and I think the way I wanted to tell this story was to show the human element, like show the fact that obviously humans have the capability of being psychic. Um, and, I touch a little bit also on the idea that um, non-humans. So, that even goes to Rupert Sheldrake's work with dogs and animals, that they're non-human. They seem to have a psychic connection with their owner. He proved that in a controlled study. And yeah, from there we can go to aliens, or what people perceive to be aliens, something that is not us, that seems to have the ability to connect with our brains, with our consciousness, non-locally. And obviously there's multiple factors with regards to the way that can be facilitated. There are psychic mediums, there are remote viewers, there are channelers, there's all kinds of psychics on the spectrum, so to speak. And I really like the remote viewing side of the story in history, because it is a controlled study, kind of scientific in terms of the way that they practically go about facilitating these psychic sessions. And the government, right? Maybe let's not call it the government, the military and intelligence community were very interested in using this as a tool to gain intel information on their adversaries. So that's why I wanted to cover remote viewing, because it's kind of close to the UFO topic. Um, and they also had remote viewing of UFO paranormal sort of um, targets throughout history, which we show in the documentary. And then, you know, we have a really cool cast. Thomas Jane was really kind enough to honor me with some of his time and offer his theories on what he thinks of the phenomenon. What people may not know is that he's also an experiencer. So that's why he's so interested in this. Um, we have Tracy Dolan, very heavily featured in the documentary. Tracy Garbett Dolan, wife of Richard Dolan, prolific historian on the UFO and UAP topic. She's a wealth of knowledge, and she's hyper intelligent on her views of this subject. And then we had psychic remote viewers featured like Paul H. Smith, Joe McMoneagle, Chris Ramsey, the magician, and many, many more. Ingo Swan for sure too.
Let me ask you a question. I'm in BC. I was working with a film producer here in Vancouver who's doing a documentary. You're talking about talking to animals. He was in contact with Ron Pandolfi, the infamous CIA guy that's supposed to brief the president and stuff. And he was working with his wife and his daughter, his 13-year-old daughter, on what they call the translator in the jungles of Costa Rica, or I can't remember the exact country. And this was a documentary where they were using AI to pick up animal or bird sounds and stuff like that, where birds will warn people when someone's coming and stuff like that for poachers. And he sort of got kicked out of it at the last minute. So I don't know what happened with the documentary, but I would like to ask you as a film producer, how do you set up a film? Do you have your financing set up beforehand? Because I know from him, it's an expensive business. I mean, one or two interviews. If you got to travel, that's a lot of bucks. So how do you finance it if you got a young kid and you got a family and stuff, and so you don't really sort of have to sell the house to do a documentary?
Good question, Grant. And obviously, it's a battle that I've been waging over the past 2 decades. Um, it's a balance between being smart with your money and having a bunch of know-how yourself, but also working with other creators that can help enrich your story. And you can sometimes offload some of your work to on a good budget, right? I'm not getting the budgets that James Fox gets, or maybe even your friend in BC gets for his films. A lot of Canadian filmmakers get their budgets from the Canadian government through grant programs.
Mhm.
Um, I'm actually part of the DGC as a union member for the Directors Guild in Canada. Um, but a lot of what I do is just independent. I don't get money from the government. It would be near impossible for me to get money from the government for my projects, because the government doesn't really want to fund this stuff. They want to fund stories that, have an Aboriginal twist, or uh, have some kind of social warrior twist to it. You know, it's it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, the when I first started filmmaking, I was funding it all on my own. Initially just poured in my own money. Um, I went to film festivals. I found my first distributors there. I built up my resume and met other distributors that liked my work and started funding me. And then, and it's not a huge amount of funding, but they would help me.
Mhm.
And now it's kind of just like I'm back on my own in terms of funding. So I'm just being careful and trying to produce high quality content that doesn't break the bank.
So you're producing out of Canada?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. This is just happened, so let's get your comment on it. 100% tariff on non-American films.
I
that
read
gonna
it
affect
this
you? They're
morning.
gonna wipe
Yeah.
you out?
So that tariff would be on an American company, right? So they're trying to dissuade Hollywood from producing their films in Canada,
Yeah.
or TV series, right? So Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Disney, all these guys do. They have a international model for the way they produce their films. HBO. I mean, how many productions that HBO puts on are produced in the UK or in Europe, with UK actors, or European actors? Like there's so many. Game of Thrones, for example. Uh, that would end their ability to produce that over there because they use subsidies from the government. There's kind of like, if you do business in Canada, we're going to give you 20% or 25% on every dollar you pay
Yeah.
our local workers. So I'm very indie. The filmmakers executive producers I've worked with out of the US have paid me with American dollars. And I think this 100% tariff is a threat to get those guys, the decision makers that have all the money in the States, to come to the bargaining table and negotiate. I think that's what it is.
Okay.
Because he's going to collapse the entertainment industry overnight if that actually goes through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's probably, they say something, but they don't have any framework implemented to actually do it.
Yeah.
So that's the two sides there that people don't. They read the headline, they get into a frenzy, but they need to have a model to actually prove all that stuff, to go after and tariff companies.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you know, there's no date really set, and my stuff has been produced a while ago. So it's kind of like, I guess anything after this could be a problem for me, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Okay, Cindy, go ahead with your question.
So remote viewing, so you're touching up on all these consciousness related stuff, remote viewing. Are you yourself, are you psychic in any way, sense of the imagination? Like, I've got this knowing feeling.
Well, I think all humans technically have some small psychic ability, and
Right.
there's others out there that have great psychic abilities. I would argue the ones that are highly psychic probably end up in industries where they benefit from that. And the intelligence and military industries possibly are the ones looking for those people, right? Through the
Sure.
GATE program and all kinds of filter systems to find them. But myself, I've had psychic things like being at a mall and somebody's staring at me and I turn all the way around and lock eyes with them. I think that's another thing Rupert Sheldrake talked about in his studies, that
Yeah.
everybody has this sort of like very subliminal psychic ability that might be instinctual to
Yep.
protect us when we were, evolving as human beings living in a jungle or forest, a predator staring at us. We get that psychic sense, see them, and then start running. That type of thing still lingers in some people. But when it comes to having, precognitive dreams and all that type of stuff, I mean, I can't remember. I should keep a dream journal or something, but I feel like sometimes I've had stuff I've thought about has kind of come about in reality. Um, but no, I'm not a remote viewer. I don't have a crystal ball. And I'm just, a regular guy that's interested in this topic, and I believe there are really psychic people out there.
Yeah. So with that being said, are you like most of us born into family that's where everybody's asleep? Are you the only awakened one, or do you have siblings or parents or relatives who are open, who are awake?
Well, I think I've had an uncle talk to me about UFO stuff. I've had my brother. I have only one brother. He's interested in this topic. Um, I think I'm probably the one that's gone
The
into the deep
deepest.
end, dove into this topic, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah.
My parents probably think I'm crazy, but I think they are too. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. I mean, I think people like us eventually will have the last laugh because we're really ahead of our time.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
see what happens.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I appreciate it. I think you guys are the important ones in terms of getting the message out. I mean, I don't know if you've had any contact with intelligence type people who want to sort of get a message. They want, because that's the thing is most people, if you go to them and talk about UFOs, they sort of, tell you to take 5 steps back. But if they're watching TV, they'll watch it, think it's a joke, and they're going to watch it, and they don't realize they're being programmed. That I think a lot of the material they want out goes through Hollywood in terms of this subliminal,
yeah,
indirect programming where people are picking up the thing. Because you look at people say we're not really getting any far, but if you take a look whether it's true, the stuff that you did was true or false or totally accurate. If you look at Area 51, Skinwalker Ranch, near-death experiences, psychic phenomena, all around the world, everybody knows what that is. I mean, everybody's
yeah.
sort of been programmed to, they may not believe it, but the consciousness is rising on this kind of stuff.
Oh
Yes.
yeah,
So
I would agree. I mean, like television, social media has just like blown up with it. There's a million YouTubers right
yeah,
now that produce this type of content
yeah,
and more coming on every day. I think that the interest in this topic is not waning, it's gaining.
Yeah,
And yeah, if eventually there is some truth spoken to this by the powers that be publicly and some kind of real disclosure that's made, which I'm not going to hold my breath on that because, we're
mhm.
missing things like the Epstein files and stuff we thought we were supposed to have by now. But who knows? Who knows?
You
Take them
mentioned
away,
the
Monty.
you mentioned the GATE program. My assistant co-author Desta Barnabe just released a book, MK Ultra and Children. So, what kind of research did you do on the GATE program?
Well, it's something I'm interested in. And, this doc that I just released doesn't mention any of that, but when, when researching for this doc, it came up in conversation so often. And, I have met a person, they don't want to speak about who they are, but they've dealt with multiple gate program witnesses. Um, People when they were teenagers brought into this program or even like almost tween age.
Yeah.
And the gate program, for people that don't know, it's like it was for gifted people. So people that seem to learn much quicker than the rest of the students and just seemed to show an aptitude higher than everybody else in their class. So they were invited into this testing. They would get tested. They would then sometimes be brought over to do third party testing outside of the school. And essentially, some people believe that they were brought into like military or intelligence special access programs to do strange things.
yeah,
And some people were even like, from what I've heard, through testimony of a person that's worked directly with these experiencers of the GATE program, one person was tortured.
oh,
Yeah, physically,
wow,
because one of the aspects of OBE, out of body experience research,
uh-huh,
shows that you can get there not only by, deep meditation and kind of controlled mastery over your own consciousness,
Mhm.
but you can apparently use some drugs that have been known to push you into that state. Or in the past, if you suffered incredible trauma and sometimes were in great pain, you would go into an out of body experience. And this happens in hospital settings and all kinds of situations where people get into accidents all the time. So apparently, this witness was subjected to pain in the GATE program because they wanted to see if their psychic or out of body experiences were elevated. And this like kind of goes back to the Sidney Gottlieb kind of MK Ultra type programs that were starting off, back in the '60s, and um, it seemed to kind of evolve into this. Let's see if we can get young adults into this and use them through the school system in the United States.
Yeah. Well, what part of the country are you in?
Me,
Yeah.
Alberta.
Well, you're in Alberta. If you're ever in Toronto, you have to sit down in the Toronto area, sit down with my assistant because she was in the GATE program and she's written this whole book on it. And it's kind of fascinating, like using children because they, left brain isn't online yet, and they're easily sort of like it's the same as the beings, where they'll take young children with the abduction experience and they go into training. Or I always make the joke that's why the alien wakes you up and scares the living daylights out of you. They want you to dissociate. And so
That's right. Yeah.
so you can see this sort of thing. How much do you think the government, if I don't know if you heard the interview with Jim Semivan, where Jim Semivan gets a 7 hour briefing at CIA. All these guys come in with these very high level tickets. They're contractors, scientists, and he said they scared the living shit out of them there for 7 hours. And he was asked, like, did they make any advances? He said, yeah, they did. And he said, well, on UFOs, no, no, not UFOs, all the psi stuff. Yeah, this is real. This is real. This is real. And he said he was for 3 months, he just walked around in a daze. And they asked him, do you want another briefing? He said, no, I've seen enough. I don't need to know anymore. But apparently they had made a lot of progress on this psi stuff.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned CIA, and I interviewed Russell Targ in his home in Palo Alto for this documentary. And, one of my questions was, do you think the intelligence agencies are still using this as a
Yeah.
tool today? Right. And he said, of course, right. I think so, because at the end of the Stargate program, they basically sent their two best candidates from the CIA to be trained up on our system. And, there's 6 stages to controlled remote viewing. Then there's extended remote viewing and all kinds of other stuff out there. But they were practicing and creating the science behind controlled remote viewing. And those two CIA agents, there was one female, one male, and they were highly psychic. So it's as if the CIA knew, okay, let's send these people because they've already kind of been pre-screened by us. Um, they were 90% effective, like at fully illustrating sites that were given to them as targets and so on and so forth. And after that, they shut down the program. So why would the CIA send over, these people to catalog, be taught up on everything, unless they were just trying to shut down the public program, or the program that was eventually going to be that was third party at that point, and just take it in house. I think the CIA took it in house after that,
Yeah.
even though they said it wasn't effective when the program was announced after, in 1995. But you look at the idea of all this great technology that we have right now in terms of being a tool for looking at adversaries or points of interest from an intelligence point of view, right? So if you have a satellite these days, high powered cameras on there, detection, system tools that can look at heats of things and all kinds of stuff, right? From space, you can probably take a great 4K video, high resolution, super magnified, and see exactly what you want. But what if you're looking at the top of a building? If you're looking at a rooftop, you don't know much about what's inside of that building. You don't know about the personnel in there, what they're doing, what kind of technology they're hiding in there, so on and so forth. And that's where a psychic may come in. That's where you have a remote viewer that is given that target, and they're going to go beyond what the satellite imagery is providing you. They're going to get right into that building. And if you listen to the testimony from like Russ Targ, where he talks about Pat Price, this super psychic guy that's no longer with us, that was his best and brightest out of that Stargate program. Pat was able to look into an NSA facility that they didn't even know was there. They could look into a safe. They could look at the papers on a safe and read the words right off of the paper.
Yeah.
And that is the type of tool that these intelligence military agencies would want.
Hmm. Exactly. It would make sense. I mean, you'd be crazy not to. I think someone said one of the maybe it was Saving Van said if there's 1 in 10,000 chance there's some benefit to it, they're not going to drop it. They're gonna proceed.
So with that being said, Pat Price being one of the brightest, the best remote viewer, why did they get rid of him? He's an asset.
Yeah. So I think the rumor is that Pat Price was a high level Scientologist at the time. And supposedly they had found, like Russ had figured that Pat was bringing documentation and information out of his whole classified remote viewing program to other high ranking Scientologists and kind of briefing them on what was going on. Um, the CIA did not like that. The CIA does not want information leaks on this type of technology, especially when they're in the middle of a Cold War with Russia,
Yeah.
China, and other Soviet Union countries. So um, he was probably eliminated to close that leak and also send a message to Russ and them, don't let this happen anymore.
Wow. So who were the two personnel that you're talking about? Do you know who they are?
No. And Russ would not tell me either.
Oh, okay.
Can you comment on the Scientology link? Because of course, Pat Price, Ingo Swann, Hal Puthoff all had that background of almost like the Scientology had figured this thing out ahead of time, and these guys were just sort of copying the Scientology stuff. Do you get into that in your documentaries?
Well, no, because I also don't think it is that way. Like, I don't think the Scientologists got to this before. I think the Scientologists were a phenomenon at the time. It's a pretty new group, right, in terms of history compared to Christians and
Oh yeah.
Yep.
all that stuff. Um, but they were out there in terms of their thinking and thinking about non-human intelligence in the universe and so on and so forth. They were already practicing sort of strange psychic readings and stuff of their people, right? When they're trying to go clear. So I think they were attuned to this stuff. And if you listen to Hal Puthoff talking about why he joined Scientology, all these people at the time wanted to know what this group was capable of, right? And just like you were saying before, if you find out some group or somebody has a advantage um, in some kind of methodology that's not being widely spread, you're going to go try and learn about that advantage. So Hal Puthoff, Pat Price, and these other guys had joined Scientology to see what they had. And when Hal figured out later, okay, these guys don't really have what we have, he left that group. Um, Pat Price was friends with everybody there, and he had built this camaraderie. And because he was high ranking, you know, he felt some level of prestige and stuff being a part of that group. So, of course, he didn't really want to leave it. And when he was feeding information to them, that's, what really got him in trouble. So, people you still hear about today. They'll call ufology or um, people that research this stuff just pseudo Scientologists. I get this insult thrown at me from people on Twitter. And I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm not a Scientologist. I've never even, walked into one of their centers any time in my life. It's just, and, power to them, Scientologists, for at least doing something different. I have no problem with that. It's just that there's a negative connotation
Yeah.
that others try to paint Scientology with. So they loop in UFO researchers for some reason.
So do you think the founder, Ron, do you think he's a contactee experiencer?
Well, I think he definitely was interested in the occult, right? He was friends with Jack Parsons and was practicing some low level kind of black magic at the time. And he was interested in the phenomenon of, um, I think, leading people in a way, psychologically manipulating people. So I think he had that kind of magic behind him, but I don't think he never wrote about any contacts he had or experiences that were anomalous with UFOs.
Okay. Interesting.
One of the things I'm interested in that you mentioned is the contact with experiencers, the telepathy aspects of contact. What kind of work have you done with experiencers, and do you think they're as important or more important than lights in the sky, or do they have the messages, or what kind of research have you done there?
Yeah, I think like in my time looking at this, I've met with Travis Walton, interviewed him. I've interviewed Kathleen Martin. Um, I've even worked on the Calvin Parker, Charlie Hickson story down in Pascagoula, Mississippi from 1973. I produced a series called Pascagoula 73 with Philip Mantle. Um, so experiencers have come up quite often. I worked with Stanton Friedman, who championed the story of Betty and Barney Hill. And we talked about that in an early documentary I did called Being Taken. And, he was thoroughly convinced that the experiencer element is, or the contactee abductee group is the edge, that they have the real edge and information because they're going where
Yeah.
no man has gone before, or no woman. And if you go back, just look at Betty and Barney Hill's case. Barney said he had a paraben when he was hypnotized and kind of regressing through that first abduction. He said the car stopped. They got out of the car. They saw this light in the sky approaching them. And he took out some binoculars and he was looking through the binoculars and he started getting this mind communication. Stay there. We're coming to you. Don't move. Just relax. Don't be afraid. And he said he was frozen. So they also had some kind of power over his body. And, I think that sort of telepathic communication doesn't only just happen with sort of a non-human intelligence. It's apparently this V2 skull technology that may be perfected. We've had this talked about recently that maybe the militaries already have voice to skull technology, but um, what if that is a common technology because non-human intelligence, which may be way farther advanced than us, you know, they're looking down in our 3D world and they're saying, huh, look at these guys. Like they're just starting to figure it all out. Not only like consciousness technology, but physical technology to get around, and artificial intelligence to help them calculate things quickly, and so on and so forth. Um, what if they have a technology where they can literally send their thoughts from their craft into our brains? And you hear about that. You hear about experiencers that don't even see the intelligence behind a voice coming into their head. They just see a craft and they start getting a message in their mind um, all the time.
Downloads. Yeah. Fascinating. So, have you, being in the field, I'm sure you've heard of 2027. I like to say a possible contact. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that year is a little bit overblown in my opinion. Um, I've heard about people predicting that 2027 is the big date, but it gets a little bit wishy-washy where the source for that information is and how they know that 2027 is the official date of contact. Um, then you hear the dates being sort of spread out from 2025 to, I don't know, 2035
Yeah,
from newer people,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So um, I've spoken with John Ramirez. He hasn't really convinced me on that. Um, I respect him, but I need to know how they know that that is the official date for contact. Um, and look at it this way, right? We've already been contacted,
Yeah,
I'd say,
for sure.
throughout history, right? When the announcement comes that, we are truly not alone, um, is it going to be an announcement to manipulate the public further? I mean, NASA, the day before Charlie Kirk was unfortunately assassinated, NASA made a announcement that they found signs of microbial life on Mars in soil samples around a dry lake or dry water source that they took core samples from on Mars.
Yeah,
And you know, that got completely overshadowed, that completely overshadowed that announcement. But back in the 90s, a scientist had said that he looked at the chemistry of soil samples, information that was sent back from Mars, and he said that was signs of microbial life. And NASA completely destroyed his theory, shut him down, and kind of ruined his career. Um, but yet they're saying it now in 2025, and I just think there's a bit of a game in terms of the information that's put out there.
yeah,
Sometimes it's the fear tactic, sometimes it's like a chess piece move to manipulate the public.
yeah.
um, and I don't fully know what dates things will be announced, but I don't trust any of the dates that are being discussed right now.
I mean, I find it hard to believe that our government will be doing the disclosure, like real disclosure. I'm wondering the dates being thrown around 2027, is that the ET's purpose of showing themselves? Part of me feels, I mean, I think it's wonderful if it's true, but part of me feel looking at how our planet is it's so in so much chaos, so decisive. It just, who in their right mind, a higher life form of intelligence is going to come in and say, here we are, right? So that's where my logic sets in. My wishful thinking is, oh my God, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. Right now, we're in, like, it's the chaos prison planet environment, right? It's
Yeah,
the war planet.
yeah.
Um, who is coming on 2027? There's implications that there's maybe different intelligence out there interacting with us. Who out of all of them? And what would be their intentions? To save us? I mean, nobody's saved us so far. And how could it go this far if there really was this super benevolent intelligence out there that was trying to, guide us through?
Yeah. So what's your take on the three-eye atlas?
Yeah, so the three-eye atlas is very interesting to me. I think it's a comet, but I've listened to Avi, and I actually asked Avi Loeb on my friend Devin Hannibal TV, his show the other day. You can
Uh-huh.
look it up. Avi addresses all the anomalies about Three-Eye Atlas. He says that the object is 1,000 times bigger than Oumuamua. So it's
Wow.
about the size of Manhattan. Um, he says that the plume that it gives off is very, very small compared to a normal comet, especially something that would be that size. And usually the light source would be reflected in that plume. We
Mhm.
usually see the tail of a comet
Uh-huh.
giving off light,
Uh-huh.
and this doesn't have a very big tail for something so big,
Uh-huh.
um, which he would argue shows that it's not really emitting anything like a
Mm-hmm.
normal comet.
Mm-hmm.
It has nickel. It's made of nickel in what they've reported,
Hmm.
but it has no iron. And usually, a comet that has nickel will have iron and other metallic elements in it.
Yep.
Um, and it had a light source um, that was emanating from the front of it, which is not typical from a comet. It
Mm-hmm.
has sped up and it has slowed down, and it's changed directions.
Hmm.
And I think the last point in terms of trajectory is that it's actually entering the solar system and passing every planet as it goes, as if it's in line to examine. Strategically, it has a trajectory to examine every planetoid as it goes towards the sun, which he's assuming it would mark some sign of intelligence, because a comet usually wouldn't have that perfect trajectory to enter and look at everything.
Right.
Um, and then October 3rd is supposedly when it's going to be 30 kilometers from Jupiter. And at that point, the probe that's revolving around Jupiter would have an opportunity to take the best high res images of this object as it's coming by. Um, so I think he just recently posted that that probe might actually be on the other side of Jupiter at the time, and it might miss the opportunity to take those photos.
Hmm.
It's a head scratcher to me. I mean, I would love to know that it's a craft, massive craft coming slowly through our solar system. But I think um, if you're already of the mind that they're here, why would it matter?
Right. Right.
You know, they
So
probably would not need to fly through deep space very slowly to get from solar system to solar system if you're already accustomed with the idea that maybe they've been here already for a long time, and they've been interacting with our society over, history.
so it could maybe it's disguised as a comet.
I mean, another theory is that there's some kind of technology attached to a comet, because it's like a free Uber ride from, you know,
Yeah.
deep space into the solar system. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, when the facts and the information about that facts are fully presented and proven, that's when I'm interested.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating time that we're in. Hopefully we get to see all of it within our lifetime.
Yeah, I
That's my
agree.
hope. Yeah.
Back to the telepathy type stuff. Tracy Dolan, you mentioned Tracy Dolan. What did she add to your documentary in terms of things you didn't know? And did you go through her background?
Yes, I did go through her background, and things I didn't know was vast before Tracy introduced me. Essentially, I think it was 2023. I was at Contact in the Desert, and I had seen her lecture, her presentation on, um, the idea of quantum computers and consciousness, and how maybe our brains are a room temperature quantum computer that's able to sometimes have a sixth sense and look outside and connect with non-local information and so on and so forth. And it was so eloquently presented, and showed scientific sources that led to that type of thinking. And I was like, I need to interview her. So we met, and I interviewed her for the first time. I think it was 2022 actually. And then um, she was like, well, if you're interested in doing stuff on ESP, because she had ESP in that presentation,
Mm-hmm.
and her background, she went to one of the Ramp mystery schools. She did Monroe Institute training and all that type of stuff. So she's familiar with the techniques to connect with something non-local, to
Mm-hmm.
get out of body, so to speak. Um, she started introducing me to some people. So she introduced me to Russell Targ. I got, a great interview with him in the doc, and the history of this and his thoughts on the non-human intelligence side of things. Um, and then I got introduced to Paul H. Smith through my friend Ryder Lee, who has a podcast called Raised by Giants. And eventually I met with Chris Ramsey, and Chris Ramsey had done that whole three-part docu-series on remote viewing on YouTube, and he had interviewed Joe McMoneagle, so I got to feature some of that in the doc, and Chris Ramsey's um, background and fascination into the psychic phenomenon. And yeah, Jeffrey Tarrant, Dr. Jeffrey Tarrant, who I featured in the doc, he's
Mm-hmm.
doing some pretty cool research. He was featured in the telepathy tapes as a researcher, scientist that's been trying to tackle if this is real or not. And he goes to psychic mediums, people that read precognitively your future and your past and present, and things about you and your family that you never told them before. The
Mm-hmm.
typical sort of crystal ball sort of person from the past, but with
Wow.
that type of medium. And he puts EEG, sort of like those nets on the head of these people, these psychics, and reads their brain activity, and shows that the occipital lobe is lighting up. And what's interesting about that is that the occipital lobe is where we see things with
Yep.
our eyes, right?
Uh-huh.
And these people are seeing things with their mind's eye in that same area, and doing incredible readings of strangers, and knowing, you know, what kind of job they have, where they're going to work in the future, where they're going to live in the future, what their family's like, what that dynamic is like, all this really interesting stuff.
Uh-huh.
So I think there's something to be said about that type of science and applied research that's being done.
Yep.
And I think we need more of that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I kind of went off on a tangent based off your one question of Tracy Dolan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's fascinating.
yeah. Well, that ties into the telepathy tapes. I guess you're following telepathy tapes and
Yeah.
Dalai Lama. Do you know who Dalai Lama is? The girl that won the Psy games and stuff like that. Are you following all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, yeah. I actually showed this film for free at the Psy Games. Gave it to Hakeem to play at night.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's interesting. I think we're making some developments there. I mean, like Dahlia's daughter is being tested at Stanford. Its test should be finished any day now, but apparently she's blowing them away with this, nonverbal autistic able to be telepathic and 100% and all this kind of stuff. So I think we're making some progress in terms of this kind of stuff. How do you think it all fits together? Do you see all the phenomena? The way I look at it is it's all basically the same thing. It's all connected. We're almost like the Ray Hernandez vision that he had where he gets pulled out of his car and they said, you got to quit parsing this stuff. It's all the same thing.
Yeah, I think I do start. I'm starting to think it's all connected, right? I think there's um, power to knowledge. Knowledge is power, right? And the
Yep,
powers that be probably know that this is all connected. We're
yep,
talking about military and intelligence communities,
right,
but we're in the dark about how that's connected. We don't
yeah,
fully understand that connective tissue, right?
right,
We know that there's a psychic element to UFOs. We know that there's consciousness, non-local consciousness. We don't have consciousness fully defined in the public. And I
mhm,
think that's to the advantage of the powers that be, right? Because we're
for sure.
still fully unaware of the potential of human consciousness and our abilities.
Yeah,
And, they want us to chase things like celebrity and, wealth,
basketball game.
basketball, sports, like all that bread and circus stuff. They don't
Yeah,
care about that because that keeps us in the box, right? And as soon as you start going outside of that and trying to connect all these things that are on the fringes of reality, that makes you more powerful. They want those tools and they want that information for themselves, I
yeah,
think.
yeah,
And so, yeah, I think, Jacques Vallée makes some great uh, inferences to things being connected that are what it seems physical, but also has a non-physical thing to it, right?
right.
Um, it can appear in a way, but then there are craft that are gifted to people or to the military intelligence community, and it's like, well, that's physical. Where did that come from?
Hmm.
You know, and
Yeah.
maybe it might be a way of guiding us down a path to eventually catch up with them. I don't know. But I think if it's always going to be in control of the militaries and the intelligence communities, we'll really have no great leaps and strides in discerning this, unless, of course, uh, you're doing a really good job of like rogue science on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for that matter, that's why I think uh, the elite, military, whatever you want to call them, it's hard for them to disseminate this information because it's so hard to explain. What we understand is here. Your majority of public is on the other side into 5th century only. How do you bridge the gap? So then you bring the non-human intelligence in and they're looking at this huge mess, like they're not connecting. I mean, who would want to step into this kind of planetary system where it is so divided, so separate? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. And again, it's to their advantage when
Yeah,
it's disorganized and in chaos like this, because they can control the disclosure, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of ways things can play out in the future. I'm just going to have to sort of sit back and wait to see how it plays out.
but I think this is why there's people like me, you, Grant, and many others more. We chose to incarnate in this timeline to bridge that giant gap to help raise consciousness. I really think it's boots on the ground, grassroots movement in order for this to happen. And I feel this way is because we're all from source. So, like you said, all of us are all psychic, but majority of Earthling is so asleep they can't make the connection. So then I had heard somewhere that you only need 50% of the global population to be completely awakened in order to move the mass.
Yeah, and that's pretty impossible right now, given like what dominates the conversation right now are like social issues that the right or left disagree with, right? And
Epstein file.
yeah, I guess, yeah. But I mean, it's still to me that's still an issue because that's like crimes against humanity, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, the thing that I think is real is that, you know, we are a mechanical entity. I
Mhm.
do think we have advantages and disadvantages to being a mechanical entity, like sort of this flesh android, right?
Yeah.
And you're born with certain gifts. You're born with the gift to tell a story or to communicate
Yeah.
better than other people. You're born to be a uh, higher qualified athlete in the NBA or the NHL based off of those mechanics that you were given, right?
Yeah.
Um, if you have a certain type of brain, you may have a greater ability to be psychic. And
Mhm.
that is a mechanical aspect of what a human being is. So I do believe there is uh, that mechanical thing at play. But I also believe in that sort of metaphysical addition to who we are and what we are, which
Yeah.
is that we are a field. We are a field that observes other fields and can manipulate those fields, right? And I
Yeah.
think that whole quantum sort of side of things is being played with and identified right now, and it's at the fringes and it's not very public. It's not very well understood. And once that really comes into the conversation instead of only the mechanical side of things, then we'll understand why, um, you know, these high functioning autistic people are highly psychic. Maybe they have that mechanical advantage to their brain in a certain way that
Yeah.
trumps my ability to be psychic. You
Yeah.
know, maybe
Yeah.
they have something. Obviously, they have some disadvantages, but they have this other great advantage in
Yeah.
being psychic over other people.
Right.
And so if we're able to study that and push for empirical evidence of that to be more public, then we'll understand a bit more about why we're different.
Yeah. So, how old is your baby?
Uh, Almost 12 weeks. So we're getting
Oh,
up there. Yeah.
young.
3 months. Yeah.
So, I wonder, based on your type of work and who you are, and an uncle who was interested in if your baby's soul is highly intelligent and awakened,
I
you
have
know.
no idea. I mean, we're gonna see. I love the little guy, and he's got a long way to go, but I'm gonna try and keep him on the right track and make sure he has the opportunities I have, and I want him to be a better person and have uh, abilities better than mine. I think that you can teach certain abilities. Ed May, who talks about the research of remote viewing, he kind of took over that with SRI. He talks when you ask him, or Chris Ramsey asks him, can you train to become highly psychic and be as good as Pat Price,
Mhm,
um, you know, or is it something innate?
mhm,
Ed Mays says you can only train up to your natural given potential. So
mm,
there just are some people out there that are highly psychic. And then when they get trained on remote viewing and understand how to do it even better, they unlock their abilities to their fullest potential. But then there's people that aren't very psychic and they're given the same task and they're not able to discern the target as good as Ingalls Swan or Pat Price or this guy Nelson, who's friends with, you know, Chris Ramsey. So I think there is some limitations to us, and my baby will have some limitations, but I'm going to push what he has advantages in.
But then there's the other possibility because you're in Alberta that he may end up playing hockey for Edmonton or Calgary, and he'd be up against my little guy who's about 20 months old. and
Uh-oh.
we'll be on the hockey rink because that's always a big possibility in Canada. Your kid ends up playing hockey.
100%. Yeah. It's
Well,
kind of like
one
it's
last question I've got for you, and then I want you to talk about what you're doing right now and what you're thinking of doing. Have you gotten in? I was talking to Jaime Masan yesterday. Have you gotten into the whole Nazca mummy and the Booga Ball controversy? And what do you think of that?
I've worked with Jaime Maussan in the past.
Yeah.
I produced a couple documentaries with them, so I am very familiar with him, his work, and the way he does research and stuff. And sometimes I feel like it's a bit spectacle. Um, Sometimes there's not enough information there to convince me that this is real, and has been known to support some hoaxes in the past. There was the
Wow.
2015 Roswell slide that was being promoted as this alien cadaver. And, my friend Richard Dolan traveled to Mexico City to present at the same time this was all going down. Gets back from that, later finds out that that's just a picture of an actual uh, child cadaver mummy, believe it or not, in somewhere Latin America in a museum glass case.
Mhm.
So, you can look that up on Google, and he never admitted that that was a hoax. He's always held on to that. And the thing with the Nazca mummies, I have been critical about them. I don't think it's an alien cadaver we're looking at, an ancient alien. I
Mhm.
think what we're looking at are just human remains that sometimes have been modified.
Mm.
And there is evidence that some of the cadavers that were promoted early on were definitely a mix of bones.
Oh.
Yeah. One of the things you have to look for when you look at the new bodies,
Mm-hmm.
any anything that has a hand,
Mm-hmm.
when they have digits, right? The hand, the actual palm is usually relative to the size of the digits. And when you look at the hands of these mummies, the palm is always hidden. It's turned inwards towards the body. And then you see these extra long digits that go right down to the wrist joint. To
Mm-hmm.
me, that looks like a modification method where they've cut off the pinky, they've cut off the thumb, they've cut right down through the palm, because actually your fingers, everything connects through to the palm and goes down to your wrist joint, and
Mm-hmm.
they make it seem like these abnormally alien super long fingers,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no palm. And if you showed the palm, if the people that are modifying and creating some of these bodies for spectacle,
Uh-huh.
if they showed the palm fully, you would immediately see that something's off. A gorilla has a palm,
Mm-hmm.
a raccoon has a palm with digits connected. You know, you would see something there connected. Even a dolphin in the flippers, if you x-ray a dolphin flipper, the way that they're able to maneuver a flipper so well is because they almost have like a hand hidden within, fingers hidden within their flipper, and they're able to like really manipulate that so they can be like a extremely maneuverable in the ocean, right? In the
Right.
water. Um, these things don't have palms. And that is suspect to me. That looks like a modification thing.
Mm. Good point.
Okay,
Good
so
point.
now give us an indication of what you're working on now, your documentary that's out right now, and what are you planning for the future?
Yeah, so right now I'm working on a project that's highly classified.
Oh, it's like the
Yeah.
government. Are you working for the government?
I'm CIA. Um, they might get a little bit upset with this next project I release because it's controversial, and
Yeah.
it kind of uh, shows people that there's a bit of mistruth or misinformation being presented about certain things. The only other project I've done like that is called Dark Alliance. It was about the Corey Good fiasco with the secret space program and all that. Um, so it's of the same ilk. I'm just presenting this story, and I don't mean any harm to anybody. It's just a project that I think is interesting and should be presented for people to speculate on and try to derive the best truth.
That leads me to a question I got to ask you right away. Have you interviewed Richard Doty?
I have interviewed
Oh, you
Richard
haven't
Doty,
interviewed. Okay.
yeah, a couple times.
So he's not
Uh,
involved in this. Okay. Because he was involved in another project that's ongoing. So I just wondered.
oh, is he involved in the aviary or?
There was a documentary that was going to be done, yeah, and my film guy got dragged into this thing and spent a lot of money, and Richard was behind it, and then it sort of died. But the fact was that he was approached. So that's you got this same sort of thing that happened in the 1980s where they wanted something out, they got a film producer to bite on it, and he's still active. That's what I basically the bottom line is.
I agree. I
He claims
agree.
he's
I
doing the
get,
right thing, and he's a new guy now, but still he's active with a lot, and that's why I say it's so important for you guys film producers, because when they want the message out, they don't come to some guy who's just a researcher or whatever. They go to you guys because you can get you get it into the movie that people watching on TV. That's what they want. That's wide publicity where they can
Yeah.
get these stories, and it's not nobody ties it back to them. It's sort of this subliminal advertising type thing that's always going on.
I get what you're saying. It's about disseminating maybe bad information, and there's advantages to the intel agencies and to the military to infiltrate the UFO community and
Yeah,
disseminate
sure.
stuff that's not real.
Sure, you even had that in the media right now. The claim now is that the rich guys are buying up all the media, that they control, and you control a message. And this one thing I saw, it was like when they bought the one network, when they bought it, the Republican vote went up 3 to 5% in every place where they had a station and stuff like this. And we don't realize this behind the scenes, but if you can control all the media, that's where people are getting their stuff. They're not getting it. Nobody reads. The attention span on the internet now is 8 seconds, and people are watching TV, and that's where they pick up their information.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Project Mockingbird.
Good.
So,
And your program that's out right now, what's the one that's out in
yeah, what is the name?
So the one that just got released with the psychic theme, it's called The Psychic Phenomenon. That's on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Google Play, and a bunch of other places. If people want to check out my back catalog of films, they can go to occultjourneys.com. That's my studio site, and they'll have posters, trailers, synopsis of my previous documentaries. If you click on the
Which is
poster,
right on the bottom, occultjourney.com.
yeah. And then my Twitter is at Occult Journeys. My Instagram, Darcy Weir Films, and on YouTube at Occult Journeys. I've got a free documentary up there about traveling to Puerto Rico and meeting some experiencers and learning about the UFO phenomenon there, which was a fun one. So people can watch that for free. It's called Puerto Rico's UAP.
Okay, so my question wasn't what I just mentioned in the beginning, the psychic phenomenon on Amazon, Apple TV, the likes. My question is the controversial one that you just talked about.
Oh, it's
What
not
is,
out yet. It's still being edited and, all that
do you have a
jazz.
name or you're not releasing it yet?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
But yeah, when I'm ready, 100%, I'll get it to Grant and you for review for sure.
Okay, that's exciting.
Yeah, a scoop for everybody.
Yeah, wonderful. Can't wait.
And I forgot a question. Let me throw one last question in here. Did you hear the interview that George Knapp did with James Lukatsky, where Lukatsky says, my expertise is taking highly classified material, moving it down to lower classifications. And then he talks about Men in Black. that we've confirmed Men in Black. And they said, well, government, no, no, the real Men in Black. So tell me about your experience with your documentary stuff with the Men in Black.
Yeah, so I did make a documentary in the past called Who Saw the Men in Black, and it just goes through a chronological history, um, of experiencers of UFOs and then a subsequent meeting with Men in Black. And most of it in my documentary profiles experiencers and then government Men in Black. I think that the traditional Men in Black G men are going to be from different three-letter agencies that are intercepting either civilians or other military officials. And the reason why they would use different three-letter agencies is based on your status and where you were an experiencer from. So if you look at John Callahan's FAA information that was confiscated after the JAL Airlines incident, flying from Anchorage, Alaska, and they saw this Jupiter-sized UFO. It emanated two smaller UFOs that flooded the cockpit and the pilots with light, and they had to do evasive maneuvers in the sky, with a passenger plane, a massive, I think it was a 737. That was a spooky incident. And who they sent to intercept the FAA personnel was the CIA, because they're going to take that seriously. Okay, the CIA's here. They want the information. They don't want us to talk about it. Okay, my lips are sealed. But obviously, John Callahan kept information, leaked it, and that was part of the disclosure project. Then you've got people that are intercepted by Doty back in the day when he was Air Force Office of Special Investigations. And
Mhm.
they would go intercept a hiker that saw a test flight of a highly classified airplane and took photos. And they would
Mhm.
ask for those photos, right? Then you've got the FBI. They might go and intercept a police officer that's seen something, right?
Mhm.
So it's different three-letter agencies and rankings to intercept civilians or other agencies that have seen stuff they shouldn't have seen or have
Right.
come across information, right? With the anomalous sort of paranormal sort of Men in Black that exists that Lukatsky might be referencing,
Mhm.
that might be a non-human intelligence that also has a stake in the game of keeping the public unaware of their presence here on the planet. And we kind of touch on that in the psychic film with Ingo Swann's theory that our reality is manufactured by a non-human intelligence that wants to keep the population by majority unaware because they have strategic advantages to play out here if they aren't a fully acknowledged, entity or intelligence out there. Um, and that goes to like Albert K. Binder's Men in Black experience, where, you know, he was intercepted by three non-human intelligence in black suits and black hats that just spiritually almost manifested in his home. And they
Mhm.
gave him a medallion and they said, you know, when this disappears, wherever you put it, then you'll know you can speak about us publicly. But we have some interests in Antarctica and we don't want our presence known here. And he had a thriving UFO community that he had built this international uh, conference and magazine with. And he shut that down right after that encounter and then
Mm.
talked about it later when he was allowed to. So I think there might be two types of Men in Black at play here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would have to agree.
And then Lukatsky's thing when he summed it up, he said, "So what's the purpose? Is it to scare us off, or is it to drag us in?" It's like they're the real Men in Black. Are they, are they pulling you in? It's almost like, it's the same thing where it happens all the time. don't talk about it. And that's the first thing you want to do is go and talk about it. It's like,
Yeah, it's true. When you're a kid and you're told you shouldn't say things or
yeah.
talk about certain things, you're
Did you get
interested in those.
did you get into the helicopters, black helicopters, all that kind of stuff?
Black helicopters, no, but yeah, I mean that's something to
Similar, yeah.
do with the cattle mutilation phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
That's been known.
Yeah, it's interesting. You've got a wide variety of stuff you worked on, and you've done a lot of research in terms of your stuff. I appreciate talking to you and hearing your take on a lot of this stuff because it's a wide field. When you get into it, it gets more complex, and there's more rabbit holes to fall down,
Yeah.
and so I appreciate your work because you're the guy that gets the information out. Most people will see your stuff and just sit there and watch it, and that's where the message will get across. And I think that's your important role rather than the researchers may figure it out, but you still got to get the message out. And I think that's where your important role is.
Thank
So
you.
I want to ask a quick question that you said, I, just now you talked about the non-human intelligence fabricating our universe. So is it safe to say that we live in a holographic universe?
I mean, people even call it a matrix, right? And I think
Matrix.
any system where you have government and they create the laws that we live by, um, if that system is approached by a non-human intelligence and they know how to manipulate that system, of course, yeah, that's where you would have some kind of manufactured reality. So it's possible we live in like a holographic universe for sure.
Yeah. But that's the role that you and I and Cindy have is to figure it out and to get the message out as to what's going on. Because the average scientist is working on his own thing, and the average people are, and the population, living the lives of quiet desperation, taking their kids to soccer practice and trying to make money and pay the bills and stuff. That's our role is to raise the consciousness. So I appreciate your spending time with this, and I hope you can let us have an interview when your project comes out because
Yeah, when
that's
that
kind of
big
stuff that interests
controversy,
me.
yeah, the big controversial
Sure.
comes out, we certainly want to talk to you. So do you have a Patreon account?
I don't. I just have my films on streaming platforms, so people want to watch there. And a lot of them are actually free on places like Tubi TV, and some are on YouTube Movies, which is like their kind of premium film site now.
Yep.
You can just search my name, Darcy Weir, in a
Uh-huh.
lot of these different platforms, and my catalog will come up.
Oh, fascinating.
Beautiful.
Okay, that's exciting.
Okay. Well, thanks for your time, and we'll stay in touch, and hopefully we can get some information from you, and you can get some from us. So I
Absolutely.
I absolutely appreciate your spending time with us today. It's a fascinating interview.
So
Thank you. Likewise. I hope you're both doing well.
Yeah.
thank you. His little guy must realize daddy's doing important stuff, so I'm gonna sleep through this whole thing.
Yeah, he was taken away. He's carted away. So,
Oh,
yeah. But
Okay.
thank you for your time. I think what you guys are doing is powerful and
Thank you.
important research too. And,
yeah.
admire what you've offered to the public. So keep
Beautiful.
doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. We appreciate you.
Okay.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.